the spirit of life is almost non-existent in the perceptual reality of the society that we're in. It's almost non-existent. They got religion, they got civilization, you know, they got military, they got politics, they got all education, they got all the stuff, but they don't have the spirit to live.
I want you to listen to this man speak. His name is John Trudell.
I'm a member of the American Indian movement, and I'm from the indigenous nations of the Western Hemisphere. As the indigenous people, we have watched this thing happen on our hemisphere. We have seen what has happened. We have seen them come in and confuse and attack. We understand that the issue is the land, the issue is the earth. We cannot change the political system. We cannot change the economic system. We cannot change the social system until the people control the land, and then we take it out of the hands of that sick minority that chooses to pervert the meaning and the intention of humanity.
See, I have a real problem about all of this. I mean, see, to me, he was like a virus, a disease. But when I think about it, because I spent a lot of time protesting, trying to figure out how to deal with this disease. But I think that we really need to put serious thought into understanding that we're dealing with a disease. You know, it's like there's this predator energy on this planet. And this predator energy feeds upon the essence of the spirit, feeds upon the essence of the human being, the spirit. Now, this predator energy can take fossil fuel and other resources out of the earth, turn it into fuel to run a machine system. But in order for there to be a need for that system, and in order for that system to work, they have to mine our minds to get at the essence of our spirit. And the same way the external mining takes place, it pollutes. We see now, people understand how it poisons the environment, the water, the air, pollution. The mining of the essence, the mining of the spirit, mining our minds, the pollution from that is all of the neurotic, distorted, insecure behavior patterns that we develop. That's the pollution. Because in order for this predatory system, this disease, to work, we must not be able to use our minds in a clear, coherent manner. Because if we use our minds in a clear, coherent manner, we will not accept the unacceptable. But it's a disease, lives and travels through the mind, through the generations.
What I'm calling about to say is, I don't think I'm prejudiced, but if I would get on a bus and this gentleman, the first gentleman with the hair, would sit next to me, the way he's dressed, no, you,
Mr. King.
I would grab my purse and probably move to another seat. It's because of his looks. It's scary.
That's because it's out of her culture.
Well, that's interesting. Clarify, madam, what you're saying. What does the word scary mean?
Oh, gee, I don't know.
Well, now would be a very good time to figure it out. What does the word scary mean? That is my question.
Well, you would frighten me.
I understand that.
General.
What does the word scary mean? Or, same question, why would I frighten you? I haven't been in a fight since I was in 8th grade.
Well, you're probably not normally dressed up in a suit. You just look like you're a tough guy.
If she went to Jamaica, she'd be frightened all the time.
Yeah.
Well, madam, let me then answer the question.
So what is it? Is it because of the way he's dressed, the color of his skin, or his hair? Is it his hair?
Yes. Yes. And I'm sure he's not always dressed in a suit. You know,
So does that mean you're frightened of all men who are not dressed in suits?
No. No.
Okay.
It's just the garb, I think, that would scare me.
Well, you know, this is interesting, madam. Let me then advance this point. I speak of the old racism, which was Dr. Martin Luther King. I then speak of the new racism. One of the things you have to understand about racists or about yourself is racists are inherently intellectual cowards. They won't come out and say, I hate niggers because I hate niggers. Story over. What they will do is take pseudo-facts. They will take facts that are not true and use that as the intellectual pyramid to come to a conclusion that is inaccurate. If you actually want to talk about the statistics, if you are afraid of me on that bus, I don't ride on buses, because you think I'm going to murder you, there is no statistical basis for that. You are more likely to be murdered by your husband, by your son, by your brother. If you are afraid of me sitting next to you on that bus that I don't ride on, because you are afraid that I'm going to rape you, statistically, your boyfriend, your husband, is more probably going to be the rapist. So I'm saying you are the manifestation of the new racism, and you have used the same pseudo-intellectual statistics to construct a racist position.
President Johnson transmits the bill to Congress. As Attorney General,
The great lie is that it is civilization. It's not civilized. It has been literally the most bloodthirsty, brutalizing system ever imposed upon this planet. That is not civilization. That's the great lie, is that it represents civilization. That's the great lie. Or if it does represent civilization, and that's truly what civilization is, then the great lie is that civilization is good for us.
I read a book called Indians of the Americas, and I, after reading the book, realized that I knew nothing about the American Indian, and that everything that we are taught about the American Indian is wrong. It's inaccurate. And our school books are hopelessly lacking, perhaps criminally lacking, in revealing what our relationship was with the Indian. When we hear, as we've heard throughout all our lives, no matter how old we are, that we are a country that stands for freedom, for rightness, for justice, for everyone, it simply doesn't apply to those who are not white. It just simply doesn't apply. And we were the most rapacious, aggressive, destructive, torturing, monstrous people who swept from one coast to the other, murdering and causing mayhem among the Indians. There's one Indian in the...
There's no clear thought being exercised right now in the American public. They're allowing the insanity of the leaders, to make decisions, all right, that really are not in the best interest of the public. They're not in the best interest of the children of the public. They're not in the best interest of the grandchildren of the public. They're not in the best interest of the earth. They're not in the best interest of anyone.
And that isn't revealed, because we don't like that image of ourselves. We don't like to see us. We like to see ourselves as perhaps John Wayne sees us. And and also what we've learned about the Indians has been largely taught to us by Hollywood and by motion pictures. They have educated us. So we naturally believe that when the Indians came, that the wagons circled and the Indians rode around and subjected themselves to terrible fire and died at a ratio of 65 to 1.
Both barrels of a shotgun would always get 2 Indians.
Yeah, and that wasn't the way it was at all. But anyway, Indians have been tragically misrepresented in films and in our history books, in our attitudes, in our reporting. And so we must set about to re-educate ourselves.
We have lying dormant in us, we have a genetic memory. And in that genetic memory, there's knowledge. There's knowledge in that genetic memory, all right, that goes back to the ancient, to the beginning for us, right? And in this genetic memory, there was a time when we were all tribes. Every human being lived within a tribe. Every human being recognized this reality that the earth was the mother and the sun and the sky was the father. Father, sky, mother, earth. Recognized that in our totality as human beings, all right, our relationship was to that.
At a time when we say, especially, that we are going to keep our treaties and that we do keep our word and that we, above all people, do keep our word, I think it's important to mention that there have been nearly 400 treaties written by the United States in good faith with the Indians, and every single one of them was abrogated. Means broken or changed or altered.
From the political end, Ames' statement was same as Indians of all tribes, Alcatraz. You have a legal responsibility. Treaties are laws. By the Constitution, they're laws.
But when I look at America now, going back to the treaty, this American generation, they don't look at the treaty as having any validity. All right, well, I'm going to say that was an agreement made between their ancestors and my ancestors. And when they break that treaty like that, they're telling me they have no spiritual connection to their past, no respect for their past. And if we want to get down to the realities of checking legislation that's been passed in the U.S. Congress and doing our homework on agencies such as the Federal Bureau of Investigation and these energy mobilization boards, we'll find out that they now have all the rights and the individuals are losing the rights. And it's almost sometimes I feel like a war is being waged against us.
They lied to you, they confused you, they told you that you had freedom and democracy, but you go back, you read your Constitution, you read your Declaration of Independence, and you will see that the only people who could decide these freedoms were white males who owned property, and all the rest of us were excluded.
For more than 6 months, a band of American Indians has been living without government approval on Alcatraz Island, the rock that used to be a federal penitentiary. And all attempts to get them off have so far failed.
Welcome back. This is Radio Free Alcatraz from Indian Land, Alcatraz Island in California. This is John Trudell speaking for the Indians of all tribes, and for this portion of the show we hear that the government has been practicing a policy of taking what they need from the Indian people. Well, not necessarily what they need, taking what they want from us just about any time that they would like to do so, and they've been doing this through the years, are doing it today. And I would say that a large majority of the people out in the average American people aren't even aware that this is going on. And maybe that's why the government is allowed to get away with this.
The garbage is piling up. The lighthouse is broken. But they say it's no worse than living on a typical Indian reservation.
This is a country where all men are created equal, and it's the land of the free and the home of truth and justice and liberty for all. Well, we want to know why that doesn't apply to us. So, if this is the land of the free, then we want to know why we don't have the respect and dignity that all free men are accorded by other free men.
The government had declared Alcatraz surplus property. Young Indian nationalists, claiming an old treaty right to unneeded federal property, descended on the island 1 year ago today and took it over.
If there's ever going to be a generation of revolutionaries raised, people wanting change, these kids are getting good experience as to what Indian relationship is with the government. Because this has been, like all along the lines here, this has been a very peaceful protest.
We occupied the island in the name of the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty. See, and the reality that that treaties are laws, so it was really about law, it was really about a legal issue, not a moral or an ethical issue with the government's responsibilities.
What Alcatraz meant was it meant for the first time we saw young Native people standing up and saying, we have rights. We have rights to the land, we have rights to our own government, and we want to be listened to, and we will be heard.
Now what we have here is the model of our island and how we're going to have it. We will become an international outlet worldwide for authentic Indian art. And this will establish our base income to run the island and our university.
Part of what we're saying on Alcatraz is that besides wanting the deed to the island for our cultural center, that we want to be treated as human beings, to be looked upon with respect as equals.
Well, I can understand they might feel that way, but I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind that if the federal government felt as though they should come off, that they would come off and pretty fast.
Approximately a month before we were removed, the government called us together for a negotiation and said that they had a new proposal. They would lease us half of the island, and we could have job caretaking it. And they would give us $250,000. And we told them no, because it wasn't about that. We wanted them to legally recognize their responsibilities to the Native community which we were representing. So for us, it was all or nothing. This is what it is that we need to have, and we will settle for nothing else. So they came in on June the 11th, a SOG team, Special Operations Group, a U.S. Marshals, and they took the people that were on the island off the island.
We were negotiating with the government concerning settling the Alcatraz issue, and they guaranteed us that no action would be taken against Alcatraz Indians as long as these negotiations were taking place. And then they turned around and they came out there and they took our people off the island. They called our attorney at 4:30 yesterday afternoon and told him that they would have word concerning the deed to the island. They would have it for us Monday morning. And that's what we were waiting for, and they came in while they were doing one thing with their left hand, they came in with their right hand. They lied to us.
Hello.
Go ahead, what's your question, please?
My question concerns, you know, you blame it on the white man on how we came over and take your land. I don't understand when the Japanese are coming over and they're buying it, and that's okay. I don't see what this is about the Howleys coming over. You come over to our country and buy up our land too. You know, it works both ways. I don't see how you can have this rallies and everything against the white man. This is America, you know.
Let me just say something to this caller. This is not America. This is Polynesia. Our country was stolen. That's one of your problems. You're ignorant, woefully ignorant. I am very active against Japanese ownership of our land. I have testified repeatedly at various commissions and at the legislature in opposition to any foreigner owning Hawaiian land. But you, caller, need to learn about Hawaiian history and about where you are. And that attitude that you have is the same attitude that Joey Carter has. You think you are in America. You are not in America. You are in a colony that is in Polynesia that was forcibly taken, just as, I might add, all of Eastern Europe was forcibly taken by the Soviet Union, which Americans think is a very, very bad place. The bad, bad Soviet Union. Well, the bad, bad United States of America took Puerto Rico, it took Alaska, it stole Indian land, it took Hawaii, it took Guam, it took Micronesia, Palau, and you had better learn that history because you are the recipient of an imperialist tradition.
500 years we have had to fight and resist and struggle against the oppressor who has come. They called us Indians and said that we didn't have any rights. They called us Indians and said that we were no longer people. They called us Indians and they used their manifest destiny mentality to justify their genocide against us.
In the 1960s, the FBI launched what it called the COINTELPRO program, the counterintelligence program. And essentially it was a program within the FBI to infiltrate the civil rights movement and to destroy it from within and from without. In the late 60s, very early 70s, when activists within the Indian community started vocalizing their situation with regard to deprivations of human and civil rights, the FBI shifted or used the same basic tactics to go after AIM.
I have to ask you this, since it's Columbus Day, does that mean anything to you as a Native person?
I mean, with no disrespect to anyone, I think asking Native people to celebrate Columbus Day is kind of like asking the American people to celebrate Osama bin Laden Day. And I actually think that terrorism arrived on this hemisphere with Columbus because for us as Native people, the experience that we had was, you know, I mean, how did my land become somebody else's country? Our request for political asylum is built upon the reality that America is still conducting its genocidal war against the Indian people. Our request for political asylum is based on the reality that you cannot embarrass the American government. You cannot embarrass something that is built and based on greed, violence, and corruption. It cannot be done.
We have never really seen the war go away. I mean, if you're dying from the 7th Cavalry's bullets, or if you're dying from induced poverty and racism and class systems and sex systems, all right, and you're dying from alcoholism and poverty, all right, or someone has come in now in the name of maximizing their profit, and they're getting you to work in the mines, the uranium mines, and you're dying from lung cancer, and you're dying from the cancers and the diseases that come out of that. You're dying. It's the same as the bullet killing you, and I see it all as a war. You know, like I've heard a lot of people talk about the theoretical nuclear war. What if it ever comes? Well, you know, let's alter our perspective on that a little bit and say, well, the nuclear war is here. That's what that dead Navajo uranium miner is. He's a victim of that war. That's what them stillbirths are that came out of 3 Mile Island. That's what the miscarriages and the stillbirths are in Pine Ridge, where the radioactivity's reached into the water.
The nuclear war that is being waged against the people on the Western Hemisphere does not just happen and occur after the uranium has been made into plutonium. It occurs and it begins the day that one of the corporate terrorists decides, well, we're going to take the uranium from these Indians over here. And then in order to get the land, to get the uranium from under our land, and in order to maximize their profit at the same time, while they are doing this, they use their law enforcement agencies, such as the FBI. They use them as a private standing army for the corporate state, and the FBI comes into our communities and they attack us while they're calling us criminals. And then after they have broken down and they have put our people into the prisons and they have killed our most vocal people, and they have driven our people underground, while they have used the taxpayers, while the corporate state uses the taxpayers' dollars to send its private army to attack us, then when the resistance is beaten down enough, then the corporate state comes in and makes deals with the federal government, and they walk away with all the resources at a very cheap price, because their entire war against us was waged and subsidized by the American people under the name of law and order. So they get it for nothing, and then they turn it around and sell it back to the American people. That is the principle behind maximizing the profit. It is the principle behind colonization.
You know, and it's not just the U.S., it's Western civilization. France, England, Germany, they're not, you know, they're not immune to this. They're just as, in their technological, civilized mindset, they're just as dangerous as the U.S. They're the parents of the Americans. America's their child, so they cannot remove themselves from responsibility for the behavior of their child. So it's not just the U.S. Everyone likes to point it at the U.S. You know, and that's what makes the other countries so dangerous, because they want to pretend it's not them. The United States isn't the only one that has enslaved its citizens as workers. You know, the United States isn't the only one that's feeding off of the mass of the people, and the United States didn't create the idea. It came from here. In the end, what allows this aggressive behavior to continue is the participation of the citizens of the democracies. You know, they'll turn around and they'll condemn the violence of their governments or other systems, but yet they, you know, they'll live off of the fruits of it.
Power is something that emanates from us, from the human being. Human physical being, spirit. And power is about that spirit, about the being, and our relationship to the planet, to the earth, to the universe. Is where our real power connections are. We live in a time where we have been indoctrinated to believe that authority is power. So when we look externally and we see these ones that would feed off of us and control us, they have defined power from the material perception of the human, not of the being. So we look at economic systems as being power, but in reality an economic system is basically a system of authority. And we look at military systems as being power, but in reality that's another system of authority. Or religious systems, but these are systems of authority. But we have been programmed into believing that these things are power, and because we have really no influence in these things, no real accessibility to these things, and if we believe they have the power, then it doesn't say much for ourselves. So power really is about our relationship to life. See, maybe we should be developing our loyalty to this planet and this earth and our future, our descendants, more than we should be to governing political systems that have created all these problems. See, but now most people are trying to find solutions to the problems, but they're trying to do it within the confines of the confined abstractions of democracy. And so if they're not willing to think objectively about our responsibilities towards our own descendants, then they will come up with no solutions. They will only perpetuate the enslavement and feeding.